That's Nick.
And that's Joseph, and today we're here to talk about The King of Staten Island, the sixth film directed by Judd Apatow, which will be available on demand courtesy of Universal Pictures, June 12th, 2020.
I'm surprised to hear Judd Apatow's only done 6 movies.
Yeah, I mean...
I feel like he's done more.
Well, he's produced a ton of stuff.
Sure. I mean, you're not wrong, but that's a surprise. Anyway, this movie, I'll tell this plot.
Okay, sure.
I'll try. So Pete Davidson plays a guy named Scott.
Scott Carlin.
Who's kind of like, it's like semi-autobiographical.
Yeah.
Because Scott's in his 20s. He lives in his mom's house in the basement. He's a loser. And the film kind of revolves around his mom, who has been single since her husband and Scott's dad died like 17 years prior. But she meets a guy.
He was a firefighter.
Well, but let's just tell the basic
sure.
story. She meets a guy and gets serious with him, and the guy says, like, your adult son should leave. And she agrees. Basically. And they give him plenty of time to leave. And it kind of revolves around him dealing with that. And ultimately, actually, I forgot how it ends. Does he leave or does he stay?
He starts to make decisions that are more appropriate.
We don't know, actually.
We don't know, but...
That's right.
He's in the city, he's in New York with his girlfriend.
Right, but he's just visiting her. Anyway, we'll break it down. That was a terrible synopsis.
Yeah, so I think it's important to note that his father's occupation as a firefighter was important, who died in flames. I think that if you have happened to watch Pete Davidson's, it's his Netflix comedy?
His Netflix comedy special.
Which we had watched recently, which might make you feel a little bit overly familiar and kind of numb some of the, not surprises of the plot, but the parameters.
Well, the opening scene is him in his basement with his friends, and this new girl who's part of the group asks about his dad. And in Pete Davidson's comedy special, he talks about how people ask him and he jokes about it because Pete Davidson's dad died in 9/11.
Yeah.
But in the film, his dad is just a firefighter who died in service. So, yeah, it does mimic that because he kind of acts like he's upset about it, but he's kidding. He's very aloof about everything.
Yes, which kind of makes the growth, the progression of his character seem non-existent to me. But,
so he is just like out here doing nothing.
Wannabe tattoo artist. So one day he's out like by the beach or the park, wherever, with his friends tattooing, and this like 9-year-old boy walks up on them and says, "I want a tattoo." So Pete Davidson's character says, "Yeah, I'll give you a tattoo," and he begins to give him a tattoo. The kid gets freaked out and leaves. Cut to the dad with the kid approaching. Bill Burr,
who's played by Bill Burr, approaches the house, Scott's house. Marisa Tomei opens the door, and he explains, like, your kid did this to my kid. Then he realizes that her kid is a grown-ass man, blows up on her, but then he returns, saying, like, apologizing and wanting to take her out on a date. So things escalate very quickly between the two of them.
Which she first keeps a secret from her son. Meanwhile, she's also suffering some empty nest syndrome because her younger daughter, played by Maude Apatow, has just left for college, and she's kind of the responsible one that was kind of the glue that kept their familial unit together.
Right.
That's created kind of the distress for both of them.
Right. So Scott is forced to get a job, so he starts working in a restaurant. Yeah, it culminates with Scott starts having sex with Bill Burr's character's ex-wife as a way to kind of get information because he's trying to destroy his mom's relationship. He's effective in a sense. He doesn't execute it well, but it culminates in the two gentlemen getting into like a fight in a pool. And Marisa Tomei's character walks up. She's pissed, like, both of you get the fuck out of my lives. He has nowhere to go. Scott has nowhere to go, so he ends up going to the fire station Bill Burr's character works in. And then that's another sort of chapter in the story where he somehow like is able to work, or I don't know if he's volunteering, whatever, in the firehouse for like refuge.
There are a lot of complex tangents, such as the reason that he has nowhere to go. His friends
they committed a pharmacy robbery, and they all got caught, and he didn't. So none of them are available to let him crash.
All of his friends are in jail because they tried to rob a pharmacy.
And his pseudo girlfriend, played by Bel Powley, he's kind of burned that bridge.
Right.
So he's forced to resort to the kindness of Bill Burr and bonds with all of these firemen, including one played by Steve Buscemi, who all knew his father, and feel guilt. Because that's another motif, is how firemen, should they have a family or shouldn't they, because they could leave, they could die at any moment.
This film is all over the place. I enjoyed it enough. I was frustrated with it, but I decided let me write down the memorable moments.
Because the running time is 2 hours and 7 minutes.
It's a long ass movie. I could only come up with 6 memorable moments.
Okay.
3 of which I thought were good and 3 of which were annoying. So I think that would sum up my score of the film. It's
sure.
Just if you like Pete Davidson, you'll probably be into this.
Mm-hmm.
So the memorable moments were him, Scott's character, tattooing the kid.
Okay, yeah.
Because you can see from a mile away, there's no way this should be happening, but he's going to do it. It was very cringeworthy. It was effective. Mm-hmm. I was very uncomfortable. The next one is towards the end of the film, when Scott is living in the firehouse. All of the firefighters leave on a call, mm-hmm. and this man approaches the fire. So Scott's just sitting in front of the firehouse, twiddling his thumbs, doing nothing. And this man approaches, clearly has an injury to his belly. So he's bleeding, saying he needs help. But it's clear this man was the victim of a violent crime that maybe if the police come, he would get in trouble. Mm-hmm. So that man, not Scott, but the man playing this criminal, I thought that scene was very funny. Him trying to convince Scott that he needs to help him, but don't call the police, mm-hmm. don't take me to the hospital. He takes him to the hospital, them sitting in the waiting room. I thought that was very funny. It's a pretty long scene, so that was effective. Also, another storyline is Scott and Bill Burr's character have a falling out, but then when he goes back to the firehouse, they start to rebuild their relationship. Mm-hmm. So part of that is Scott is tattooing Bill Burr's character on the back. Mm-hmm. And it's this montage of them at moments filling it in. And we don't know what it is. So obviously the big reveal happens. And the reveal is in the hospital with Marisa Tomei's character, and he takes off his shirt, and then her reaction to it was very funny. Mm-hmm. And then when we see the actual tattoo, which is just a fucking crock pot of nonsense.
Yeah.
Including a family portrait of Scott, Marisa, Bill Burr, his sister. Mm-hmm. And then he goes, well, please tell me there are no Chinese letters on my back. And there were. It's just a funny scene, and I think it was good comedy, because for quite a chunk of time there's an allusion to this tattoo that is finally revealed, and it was well done. So then parts that don't work for me, I think overall the film felt like whoever wrote it.
It was written by Apatow, Pete Davidson, and SNL writer Dave Sirus.
It felt like maybe people who don't have regular lives trying to write about mm-hmm. regular lives, because there are many moments which are probably the most annoying to me. So Scott gets a job in this restaurant that's owned by his aunt's husband, I think. Mm-hmm. And just every interaction.
Played by Kevin Corrigan.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Every interaction in the restaurant reads so weird. The way the customers talk to the servers, the way the servers act. The worst part of it is at the end of the night, all the servers have to fight for their tips.
Box.
Literally all the tips are in a bucket, and then they fight, and whoever wins gets the tips. I mean, I don't know. I'm sure some people will think this is fucking hilarious, but I just thought it was so out of touch.
Yeah.
And it wasn't funny to me. The next thing is when Bill Burr and Marisa Tomei's characters finally have a sit down with Scott and tell him hey, you're too old to be living here. We need our privacy. Mm-hmm. You have the summer to get out. And you're going to start, and while you're here, you need to pull your own weight. So starting today, you're going to go pick up my kids and take them to school. So this firefighter's hey guy who tattooed my kid, who I really think is a loser, go to my fucking ex-wife's house, pick up my 2 kids and take them to school. Mm-hmm. So fucking Scott shows up to the ex-wife's house, and she's like, who the hell are you? I'm not giving you my kids. But then he says something silly. She's like, okay, take my kids. he takes these kids to school, and then the school teacher's like, who the hell are you? You're not, like, did you register in the office? No. Okay, well, you're supposed to register. She's asking the daughter, and it's like an awkward, like, are you sure you're okay? Did this man do something to you? And then the teacher's like, well, it's fine. Go ahead and put away some art supplies. It just felt like...
That's not how the
clearly whoever wrote this doesn't have kids, or they take their kids to some fancy private school and the nanny
and
takes
somebody else deals with that part.
Yeah, I just didn't understand that. The next thing is there's a scene where Scott interviews Machine Gun Kelly's in the film playing a tattoo artist, and Scott applies to be his apprentice. So he shows up for like an interview, and obviously Scott's a loser, so we expect the interview not to go well, but Scott's like, just, it's so awkward because he's like, well, how much do I get paid, and blah blah blah, and then he doesn't like what Machine Gun Kelly's telling him. And Machine Gun Kelly is tattooing what looks like a white supremacist because he has some weird shit like a Confederate flag, and he's like a skinhead. And Scott starts like making these passive aggressive comments about how he's like a douchebag, and then the guy jumps up and wants to fight him, but they don't connect, and that's the end of the scene.
Yeah,
super awkward.
And unnecessary. For the purposes of the plot.
So for me, it's like half and half. Like, it's a long-ass movie that I think a lot of it didn't work, but enough of it worked that I did chuckle a few times. I did sit through it without getting up and leaving. But overall, like, Scott doesn't really...
progress.
His arc is very like minimal. He doesn't really progress that much.
Yeah. And I like Pete Davidson as a presence, but there's really it's really one dimensional. And a lot of the other characters, especially his friends, like Moisés Arias plays his short friend Igor. Like
I was much more satisfied with all of the supporting cast. So I was very happy with everyone except Pete Davidson.
Yeah, which he isn't a problem. It's just that I don't think I was left feeling with what I'm supposed to.
I don't know that I think he's also watching his comedy special and listening to him do interviews and appearances on different shows. I mean, he says that he's often surprised like how he even got on SNL and how he keeps getting to stay. And I would agree. Like, there's no shade. I mean, obviously people like him and that's why he's on there, but he's not like this comedic genius. He's super awkward, which works in the SNL skits.
Yeah, he has
which are only like 90 seconds, to 3 minutes long.
Yeah, he has a lane for sure.
But to translate that sort of behavior, because what's that one character he plays, Chad, or where he's just kind of like a doofy guy? I mean, they stretched that man out like for 2.5 hours.
Yes.
It's tedious, but luckily the supporting cast is very strong.
Right. But I think that's a lot of... all of Judd Apatow's films are built around a noted comedian. Like Steve Carell, 40-Year-Old Virgin. There's Seth Rogen, Knocked Up. Adam Sandler and Seth Rogen in Funny People. There's This Is 40, which is kind of an anomaly. And Trainwreck with Amy Schumer. And he gets a great support. Like, remember Tilda Swinton in Trainwreck?
Yes.
But then Trainwreck also had similar things, like there's that LeBron James tangent, which feels a lot like the Machine Gun Kelly thing here. Is a weak moment, but we got this personality, we need to keep it in there. But to me, all of the catalysts, that it was written in such a way that, as soon as Bill Burr makes a comment about how he doesn't have a tattoo on his body, it's like, oh, guess what's gonna happen? Like, everything it's very obvious where it's going. To me, but
which is nowhere.
Right, which kind of is nowhere. But to me, it's like it seemed this was a cathartic exercise for Pete Davidson. But it reminded me too of, do you remember Joan Rivers and Melissa Rivers were in that movie about the death of Joan's husband, where they're playing themselves?
Yes.
Kind of like that exercise, which might be more necessary for him than for us. It was shot by Oscar-winning cinematographer Robert Elswit, who is a favorite of P.T. Anderson, George Clooney, the Gilroys. He shot the last 2 Mission Impossible films. It's my understanding that Judd Apatow was gunning to use him to film a comedy, but I don't really see what is necessary for him to capture Staten Island. I did really like the trio of women surrounding Pete Davidson, particularly Marisa Tomei, who I think is always entertaining and has just this, she's very multifaceted. She can do all these
she's
things.
Great.
Like
I've always liked Bill Burr. He's really good.
Their courtship was actually quite touching. I don't really believe where it ends up, but the initial stages are nice. Maude Apatow I thought was fine as the sister, and I really liked Bel Powley as his girlfriend.
Oh, yes.
Who's going to be the civil servant and is trying to bring up Staten Island.
I was going to mention that. There's a lot of attention brought to like how Staten Island is not a desirable place. And I feel like I'm not super familiar with that area.
Well, it's the garbage dump, right?
Yes, I do know that, but I'm not super familiar, because I'm born and raised in Los Angeles, but and don't visit there, but I didn't really get a sense of Staten Island. Like, it looked just fine to me.
It looked just fine. There was nothing remarkable to look at in the film, I thought, especially justifying Elswit to be your cinematographer. But I will say that it did have moments of poignancy that probably make this most similar to Funny People had that, and also was a film that had it felt like one too many acts. But to me, this felt a little similar to This Is 40 with Paul Rudd and Leslie Mann, who's Apatow's wife. And it ends in a moment that I wish had been captured more throughout the film. It's when he's looking up at New York in the city, and it's Kid Cudi playing The Pursuit of Happiness, which is an album I really like. But to me, that it ended on a perfect note. I just wish that the rest of it had followed suit.
Well, this film will be streaming on Netflix, right?
No.
No?
I don't know. This is from Universal Studios.
Oh.
Universal Pictures.
For some reason, I thought I watched it on Netflix.
It's available on demand. No, you did not.
Then that changes my opinion, because I was going to say if it's on Netflix, it's worth a watch because you don't have to pay for it.
It won't be as of June 12th.
Oh, well, in that case, I still think it's worth a watch. I would give it 2.5 out of 5 stars. What would you give it?
I agree. I think that's it. God, if it could have been half an hour shorter, but or more. But yeah, 2.5 is fair.
Can we be done? Yay, bye.
Bye.